Recovering from narcissistic abuse includes a lot of things that we need to process and heal from. And one of these things is learning how to not blame ourselves for the things that we've been conditioned to blame ourselves for. Narcissists have all kinds of ways of convincing us that we are in control of their behavior, we're responsible for the things that have happened in the relationship, and that we've somehow failed them, ourselves, everybody else in the relationship. And even when you don't realize that you're blaming yourself for things that you didn't have control over, you still may be doing this on a subconscious level. In this video, I'm going to really break down several specific ways that we can continue to blame ourselves after a narcissistic relationship and introduce things to think about in a different way that can help you to stop doing this. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. So I'm just going to dive right into these. The first reason that we may be stuck blaming ourselves is that we were told time and time and time again that everything was our fault. We were actually told that we were to blame for everything, basically. And we were told this by someone that, at least at the time, we probably really trusted and we really wanted to win the favor of or get on the good side of. I mean, this was probably somebody that we either loved or greatly respected, or at least wanted to be accepted by. So when this person is constantly telling you that everything's your fault and explaining to you their reasoning of why it's your fault, it's perfectly understandable that you would start to believe this over time and really start to deeply internalize the ways that everything is your fault. Even after you leave the relationship, even after you might think that you don't blame yourself, there still might be little subconscious ways that you still believe that things are your fault. Another reason it might be easy to believe this is that when narcissists are blaming you for things, they are adamant about why everything's your fault. They seem so confident about their reasoning that it's hard to argue with them, and it's almost easier to just assume that they must be right. So in this type of a scenario, when a narcissist is blaming you for everything, what they're really doing is blaming you for their unhappiness. If you really boil everything down, their angst, their insecurity, their anger, somehow it's your fault. So if they blow up and start yelling at you or express their anger at you in some other inappropriate way, they got to somehow blame that on you. But really that came from their unhappiness and all these negative emotions that they have. So they're basically blaming you for how unhappy they are and for all of their emotional problems. But your actions or lack of actions is not what made them unhappy. They were unhappy to begin with. So when a narcissist is raging at you and they're angry, or they're maybe even just passive aggressive, and they're blaming you for their behavior, they're really blaming you for their eternal unhappiness, which is completely unreasonable. You are not responsible for the way the narcissist feels. You are not responsible for their temper. You're not responsible for their emotional problems. And this is what they're really trying to convince you of. Your faults, your shortcomings are what causes the narcissist's emotional problems. And when you look at it that way, that's really completely unreasonable, unrealistic, and it just isn't true. You can see this in a more realistic light when you really look at the details of what they're angry about. If they are raging at you for using the wrong dish soap or not wiping the counter off after you made a sandwich, when you really look at what they are so upset about, which can be very confusing, but when you look at the amount of rage or anger or contempt they feel, it doesn't really make sense. Normal people don't feel as if the whole world is caving in on them because their partner bought the wrong brand of toothpaste. And a narcissist will try to frame this in a way of like, it's more than just the toothpaste. It's that you never listened to me. And this type of an insult, like you never listen to me, you don't care about me, you don't do enough for me, you don't pay attention, This is a vague type of criticism that we can really start to internalize as well. And when this is happening, I want to share a tip that I didn't come up with until pretty much it was almost too late to use it. But it really, really helped me when I was recovering from this type of abuse. And I hope that I can describe this well, because it really helped me, but it's really hard to explain it, which is probably one reason I don't think I've ever explained it on this channel. When the narcissist is complaining about things that you haven't done correctly, or character flaws you have, things that are driving them crazy about you that seem a little vague, like you don't care about me, maybe you don't clean the kitchen enough, I always have to clean the kitchen, do you think I'm some kind of maid? Or maybe like you're really rude to my friends, like last week you were so rude at that party, why can't you be more friendly? A natural reaction to this type of criticism is to accept its premise and then immediately become defensive. Here's the trick that I discovered that you can apply to many, many things that really helped me. And this is going to sound really counterintuitive, but take whatever they're accusing you of. So in this case, you don't clean the kitchen enough, they always have to do it, and you must think they're a maid. And instead of accepting the premise and then immediately becoming defensive, like, well, I have to work all day. Well, I'm busy. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was that messy, or I didn't know you felt like that. I'm sorry, I'll try to do better. Because this only leads to like an endless 3-hour argument about what a lazy, inconsiderate slob you are, right? So instead of doing that, in your imagination, and this is just a mental exercise, accept the premise and then don't become defensive in your mind. Really try, and this can be hard, really try to agree with the narcissist instead of getting defensive and coming up with excuses about why you don't clean the kitchen. Think to yourself, okay, maybe I am a lazy, inconsiderate slob that never cleans the kitchen and makes them do everything, and I'm treating them like they're a maid. Maybe that's true. And then here's the question that will make all the difference in the world. This is the question that when I asked myself this question over several scenarios, it really cleared things up for me. I asked myself, what exactly, specifically, could I do different that would make this better? That would make the narcissist happy, that would make it so I'm not a lazy, inconsiderate slob? What exactly, specifically could I do? Which is another way of asking yourself, what exactly, specifically am I doing wrong that's making this person so angry? When you ask yourself this question without getting defensive, this is actually an opportunity for you to think critically about what this person is saying to you. And I mean, you might actually discover like, okay, I never clean the kitchen and I always make a mess in the kitchen, and maybe this person actually has a point. But if this is a narcissist and this person is gaslighting you, then what you may discover instead is, wait a minute, I clean the kitchen every single day. I wipe the counter down. I clean it every time I use it. Wait, what's this person talking about? This is the kind of experience I had when I used this exercise of what exactly, specifically, could I do to make the narcissist happy in this scenario? Because the answer was something ridiculous, like, well, maybe I could clean the kitchen twice a day instead. Maybe I could come home from lunch on my lunch break and clean the kitchen then too. Like maybe I could clean the kitchen 3 times a day. And also in this type of a scenario, I would also start to realize, wait a minute, I've never seen him clean the kitchen. What's he even talking about? Why is he calling himself a maid? I've actually never seen him clean anything. And I actually had that experience. And it was amazing to me how these things that seem so obvious would jump out at me when I would think critically and really dive into the criticism that I was receiving and accept it and ask myself, what exactly could I do differently? What exactly am I doing wrong specifically here that I could do differently? And suddenly the clarity would pop out at me and I would see how incredibly ridiculous this criticism was, unfounded that it was. And then I would start to also see the projection, like, wait a minute, I'm the one that always cleans the kitchen. I'm the one being treated like a maid. What is this person even talking about? And so that would stop me from being defensive, and it would help me to see, oh, this person is completely full of nonsense. This is a completely unfounded complaint. So I hope that makes sense. And I hope that that can help some people out there. It really helped me a lot to, instead of resisting and getting defensive and trying to make excuses like, well, I have to work all day and I'm really busy and I'm sorry, I'll try to do better. To dive into it, think critically, and see that, wait, there really isn't anything specific that you could do differently. Okay, now let's move on from that and talk about how some of us will blame ourselves for getting into the relationship in the first place, or if we're staying in the relationship. It's a very, very common problem for abuse victims to think, how could I be so stupid? How could I have fallen for this person? Like, how could I stay with this person for so long? It's so obvious that they're terrible. And I mean, this is completely unfair to anyone that's experienced this. So if this is something you're struggling with, I have some analogies and some things that I hope might help you. And the first analogy I want to share is blaming yourself for falling for an abusive relationship, for believing somebody that really acted like they were everything you'd been looking for and treated you like they cared about you and loved you. Falling for this does not mean you're stupid. It's kind of like if you went to sit down in a chair, like you were sitting down to dinner and you went to sit down in a chair and somebody just pulled the chair out from under you right as you went to sit down. And, you fall on the ground and you're like, what happened? And then the person says to you, well, you should look out when you sit down. You should turn around and look at what you're doing. You shouldn't just sit in a chair without looking. How stupid are you? Well, I mean, are you really stupid? When you are entering into a relationship with another human being that's pretending to be all the things you've been looking for, you really should be able to trust that. How could you have ever known any different? Now, if you went to sit down at a table and somebody pulled out a chair from under you all the time, if this happened to you a lot, you probably would get into the habit of like looking immediately before you sit to make sure that there's actually a chair there for you. But you really shouldn't be expected to have to do that. That's not really a reasonable thing. And it certainly doesn't make you stupid for not doing it. And if you saw someone that always did this every time they sat down, you'd probably think to yourself, wow, why is that person so paranoid? What have they been through? Remember that the things that a narcissist is capable of, and this type of abuse is so unbelievable. It is so counter to what we perceive as normal human nature. It is so shocking and unbelievable that even you, after experiencing it, have a hard time believing it. And all the people around you that you try to explain it to can't even understand it, let alone believe it, unless they've experienced something like it themselves. Something that can't even be understood or believed. How in the world were you supposed to be able to look out for that? That's a very unfair expectation to put on yourself. And as human beings, we are meant to connect. We have to trust each other to an extent in order to survive. This is a need we have. And when we trust another human being, we're always taking a risk. We have to kind of evaluate that risk every time we encounter a human being, but we have to take a risk at some point in order to cooperate with each other and make connections and community and society. So narcissists kind of hijack this need, and they hijack this necessity of taking risks that all people must do in order to survive. And they kind of slip themselves in there. They present themselves as kind of a counterfeit person that you can trust because they know that you, just like everybody else, needs people to trust and connect with. I mean, how does that make you stupid? That makes you a human being with normal human needs that was presented with a counterfeit version of what you really need in life. How are you ever supposed to realize that that was even a thing? Okay, now let's talk about why you are not stupid for staying too long, because you might think, okay, well, it's not my fault that I fell for it in the first place, but then I stayed for like 5 years or 10 years or 25 years or however long you stayed. Wow, I'm so dumb. Why didn't I learn my lesson when it was obvious and just get out? Okay, well, I like to look at it this way. Usually these types of relationships start out really great, and we are convinced that we've found our soulmate or somebody that's going to meet all of our needs and make all of our dreams come true, and how lucky we must be. Like, this is such a wonderful relationship, this is amazing that this has happened to us. So this relationship is extremely valuable. It has an enormous amount of value to it. We feel like, we've hit the jackpot. This is 1 in a million. Okay. Now imagine that you actually have a relationship like this that's so amazing and wonderful. And this is the reality of the relationship in your head. This is a person that you believe you can trust. This is someone you can trust. This is your companion, someone you're meant to be with, someone you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Now, what if that person one day is really mean to you, like just in a really rotten mood, and they say some horrible, hurtful things to you? And that's it. And then the next day, everything's back to normal and they're wonderful and everything's great and awesome. And this is the most valuable relationship on the face of the planet again. Okay. Now, is it really reasonable to expect somebody in that position to abandon that relationship because of one bad day? I don't think so. What if this one bad day happened once a year, and 364 days out of the year, everything is wonderful, you're on cloud 9, you're living your dream, but one day a year, this person is critical of you, mean to you, tearing you down, yelling at you, shaming you, making you feel like crap? Would you abandon the relationship because of that? Because of one bad day once a year? I don't think so, especially if you're not somebody that really understands abuse and all you know is that this is the love of your life and you had one bad day a year. Probably not, right? What if you had 2 bad days a year? What if you had one bad day a month? At what point are you stupid for staying with this person? It's not so clear, is it? And this is the experience of somebody that gets stuck in an abusive relationship, because this is the progression of what happens to us. We start out with all of our dreams coming true, and this relationship is extremely valuable to us. And then we have one bad day and it just seems like a fluke, and it's almost confusing. Wow, where did that come from? But we're not going to throw away this wonderful relationship because of one weird bad day that doesn't quite make sense, right? But then later it happens again. It's okay, well, I know that this person loves me, and I know that this is an awesome, great relationship. I know that this relationship has extreme value and I would never want to throw it away. But why were they so mean to me today? That's so weird. And it takes time to realize that this is becoming the pattern, and to realize that these flukes, these aberrations of character, are actually becoming a regular part of the relationship. They're becoming part of the pattern. They're not flukes. They're not aberrations. They're not just some weird one-off. They are part of this person that you're with. It takes a lot of time to realize that, and to shift from looking at this relationship as the most valuable thing that you've ever had and the love of your life and somebody that you can trust more than you trust yourself, to shift to, oh my gosh, this person's abusive. They're taking advantage of me. They don't love me. They don't care about the relationship. They're dangerous. I need to get away from this person. How many bad days a year do you need to shift over that way? It's not about being stupid. There's nothing stupid about this. This is about having an extreme betrayal and fraud perpetrated on you, and over time having to figure this out on your own. This is extremely confusing for somebody that's never even heard of something like this. And it's heartbreaking. And it's something that you don't want to see. You don't want to believe this. This is the last thing in the world that you would ever want to have happen to you. It wouldn't even occur to you that it's a possibility. So of course you're going to stay long past the time that this person has made it obvious that they're an abusive monster, because that's not how you started out looking at them, and it's the last thing you want to believe. So this is nothing to do with stupidity, and nothing to do with weakness either. It takes a lot of time to wrap your head around this and to accept it. Here's a couple more analogies that might help you. You need to go to the grocery store, right? Everybody needs to go to the grocery store to buy their food and their basic needs. Well, when you go to the grocery store, You don't have to worry about the food there being poison, right? You don't have to worry that somebody's poisoning the food. And what if somebody did actually go into the grocery store, or what if somebody in the grocery store actually poisoned the food? Would you be stupid for not double checking that the food in the grocery store isn't poison? Would that be on you? Would that be a reflection of your lack of intelligence? This is not something that should be expected of you. We need to trust certain people in our lives. We need to trust somebody. We need to trust certain things, and we have to take certain risks. And just like the grocery store, we really have to trust that the food in the grocery store is not poison. And if by some extreme bad luck, the food actually is, it's not because we're stupid that we fell for it. It's just bad luck. And another analogy might be a fish taking the bait on a fishing hook. Is the fish stupid? I mean, fish are kind of stupid to begin with, but really, I mean, this is bait that is presented as what the fish has to trust is food. A fish can't look at every piece of food and wonder if there's a hook on the other side of that food, because a fish has to eat to survive. We need people in our lives to trust, to connect with, to build community with, to share our lives with. We need to take these risks. And when we do this, it does not make us stupid if we don't think to look out for things that we don't even realize are possible. Another way that we can blame ourselves in a narcissistic relationship that I want to address is the way that we can blame ourselves and take the shame onto ourselves for giving up on the relationship, for leaving. There can be a lot of pressure put on us by the narcissist or by people in our lives, or even just by society, to stay put in this abusive relationship because we've committed to it, because we're not a quitter, because we don't give up on our commitments, right? This is a sentiment that you'll see a lot in society because a lot of people don't understand abusive relationships. They have this fantasy in their head that if things are going badly or poorly in a relationship, you just need to stick it out and work together and work on your relationship instead of just giving up and walking away. This is a really simplistic, simple way of looking at life because it doesn't take into account the fact that it doesn't work when you're the only one trying. And you cannot work on a relationship with somebody that is blaming you for everything, that won't take accountability for their own behavior. And you cannot work on a relationship with somebody that is blaming you for all the problems, who is also the one that is causing most of the problems. You can't solve problems that you're not creating or adding to or causing. And you certainly can't do it if you're being blamed for it all, because the person that's causing the problems won't even admit that that's what they're doing. So they're just going to keep causing problems if they can't even admit that they're the one causing the problems. So what are you supposed to do with that? Just keep trying? Just keep trying to do something about something that has nothing to do with you, that's just making your life a living hell? I think this goes along with this simple mentality of you've only failed when you quit on something. Like, the only way that you can fail at something is to quit on it, which doesn't take into account the fact that some things are impossible to do. Some things are just a completely huge waste of time. Some things are never going to work. And some things you just need to cash in your chips and walk away, because you're never going to achieve what you're trying to achieve out of that. The idea that you've only failed when you quit assumes that absolutely everything is possible if you just keep trying. And I mean, that sounds really nice, but it's bullshit. It's like chasing the end of a rainbow. If you just keep driving towards the end of this rainbow and you just never quit, just keep driving towards it, I mean, you're never actually going to catch the end of the rainbow. So at what point do you realize that and stop trying to do something that's impossible to do? Would you apply this logic to winning the lottery? Like, I'm going to win the lottery because I'm just going to keep buying tickets for the lottery. And I've only failed to win the lottery when I stop buying tickets. Well, you're probably never going to win the lottery. And when you're in an abusive relationship with a narcissist that won't listen to you, won't take responsibility for anything they're doing, and is making your life a living hell, it's probably always going to be that way, no matter how hard you try, how long you stick it out, how loyal you are, how committed you are, and how hard you try to fix something that you can't do anything about. There is no reason to feel any kind of shame or fault for leaving something that just makes you miserable, that you can't do anything about. And it really upsets me when other people from outside your relationship, people that don't have to live in the misery that you're in, feel entitled to tell you that you need to stay put there or something's wrong with you or you're a quitter. Somebody with that kind of mentality is basically telling you that you need to stay put in a miserable situation so that they can feel more comfortable with their worldview. You have a right to decide when you have put enough of your time and energy into something that is just not working out. All things are not possible through hard work and perseverance. Some things are a huge waste of time. Some things are completely unfair to you, and some things will never work. And you have the right to decide what those things are. If the narcissist wanted you to stick around forever and be loyal no matter what and never give up on them, they could have at least been nice to you, right? How does this person that treats you like garbage, that gaslights you, that tells you how awful you are, that tells you what a disappointment you are and how miserable they are to be with you, how does this person get off expecting you to stick around no matter what and making you feel guilty for wanting to leave? Making you feel guilty, not just for leaving, making you feel guilty just for wanting to leave them after they have treated you like crap. You did not make the abuser abusive. You are not the cause of an abusive person's emotional problems. You are just the person that got caught in the middle of this war that the abuser is in with themselves. You didn't ask for any of this. This is not what you signed up for. When you got into a relationship, you weren't thinking to yourself, wow, I sure would like to be with somebody that blames me for everything and makes my life a living hell. That sure would be great. That's not what you signed up for. That's not what you were promised. You are the one that had the promises broken on you. You were the one that was betrayed. You are the one that had a fraud perpetrated on you. And you have the right to recognize that and to identify something that is not what you were sold. And finally, you tried. You know how hard you tried. And no matter how hard you tried to be whatever it was the narcissist wanted you to be, it was never enough. And nothing will ever be enough for a narcissist. It doesn't matter how often you clean the kitchen or how well you try to treat their family or how much money you try to make or how much support you try to give them. You are always going to fail in their eyes. Everything is always going to be your fault. It's going to be your fault that you signed up for the relationship in the first place, your fault that they're not happy, your fault that you're arguing all the time. But really, most of the problems, or at least the problems that are destroying the relationship, are actually not your fault. None of this is your fault. You're not perfect. You make mistakes, right? But you're not the one that is abusive. You're not the one that destroyed the relationship. You're not the one that's creating a living hell in your world. And you're not the one that can do anything about that either, except for to leave. Abusive relationships are something that can happen to anyone. It can happen to the most intelligent, well-meaning person in the world because it takes advantage of normal human needs and human nature, which is something that smart people have too. So this has nothing to do with intelligence. This has nothing to do with anything that you should have done differently other than just not be a human being. Getting into this situation is something that can happen to anyone. It's not your fault. And wanting to leave is perfectly natural because who wants to be stuck in a miserable situation that they can't do anything about? Narcissists work really, really hard to get you to accept responsibility and blame for things that you have no control over. They live to dump all of the responsibility for their emotional problems onto anyone that will accept that. And they work very, very hard to convince you to do that. You don't have to take the blame anymore. You don't have to feel guilty for wanting a life that isn't miserable. And I hope that some of the things in this video that I told you will help you to stop taking the blame for things that have nothing to do with you. And I guess Lucy wants to say hello to all of you. Hi, baby. I know I don't have these. Oh, she's eating my pen. That's why she's up here. Lucy, do you want to say goodbye? Yes, you do. Well, I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye. Say bye.